go ahead and see about Bob, the man of apparently many votes. Here's our agenda. Okay. Madam Chair, I don't see Bob, but
All right, well, so it's just after 6, so I'll call the meeting to order. Before we jump to number 1 on the agenda, I just wanted to welcome the 2 guests we have with us today. Jen and Dorothy from the Massachusetts Historical Commission and Chris Heath, our town council.
Hello, everyone. Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us today. So the first thing I want to do is approve the minutes from the June 29th meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes of June 29th. Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes from June 29th?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Awesome, well, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief overview of the process
Sure.
for establishing local historic district.
Yep. So you guys are on your way at this point, which is good. I've been here, a year or 2 ago at this point, to talk to the historical commission about the process. So it's good to see that things got moving. And it was great to see your study report. That looks like it's in pretty good shape. I had sent Miles my comments and I guess they've already been mostly incorporated, so that's good. I didn't see the significance section though, so I can always take a look at that.
That's been successfully added.
Yeah. So once you are ready to go with your study report, the next step is to submit it to me and to the planning board. I can take the submissions electronically. You can just email it to me. I do recommend that folks submit it to me first so that I can say that it is complete before you submit it to the planning board in case it's not complete. And then after that, you have to wait 60 days. That's required under state law. You just have to wait 60 days, basically. I'll tell you once I get the study report, what your 60-day time period is when your 60 days expires. That gives us time for review and comment, both the MHC and the planning board. You don't have to wait on us. If we don't comment within that 60 days, you don't have to like extend your time period or whatever, you just have to give us 60 days. At the end of the 60 days, you do then have to hold a public hearing. There's requirements for notice in that in 40C, I think it's about 2 weeks before. And that's basically just a chance to introduce the district to the public and get any feedback on the proposal. Obviously, it's a little easier because you're not trying to convince a whole bunch of people, you're just trying to convince Mo. But it's a chance to sort of present it and gather feedback from the public about the proposal. After that, you take any feedback received from us at MHC, from the planning board, from the public hearing, anything else that comes up, and then incorporate that into a final study report. So it's basically just editing the preliminary study report and kind of firming things up, making sure that the dates are going to be the dates that you're actually going to move forward, or that you had the public hearing, that you will be going to town meeting. And again, incorporating any feedback. The MHC said yes, the planning board said yes, no comments at the public hearing, whatever the case may be. And so then that is what gets submitted to town meeting. So the bylaw goes on the warrant and the study report has to be available to voters, either on the town website or printed materials, however you usually make things available to folks at town meeting. And then it's a 2/3 vote at town meeting. It's not zoning, but it is land use, so it's 2/3 vote. And then after that, there are a few more steps. You do have to record the district with the registry of deeds. That is what actually makes it legal. Some communities forget that, but you do have to do that. And then send everything into me so that we can add it to the state register of historic places. And then you have a local historic district. A lot of steps in there, but again, I'm kind of here to walk through everything as you have questions.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any preliminary questions before we on anything in the process before we jump through the document.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you talk about the planning board. Can you talk a bit more about the planning board?
Yes, so for both MHC and the planning board. When you look at 40C, it is really just review and comment. So for us at MHC, we take them, the study reports, I present them at our monthly meetings. And it's usually just, we recommend that the town of Needham establish this local historic district. Both the MHC and the planning board, it's not a yes or a no, and it's not gonna stop your process. Or it's not gonna hold up your process in any way either. I've had planning boards try and do that. That's why I said the 60 days is just your 60 days. If the planning board doesn't get to it in that time period, that's too bad for them, but you can move forward with your process. And there's nothing, it's not like zoning articles that go before town meeting where the planning board has a very specific process that they have to do, and they have to give a report, and they have to have a public hearing, they have to give a report, that kind of stuff. There's none of that in 40C. It's really just for the planning board to be aware that this is happening. And again, they can discuss it, they cannot discuss it, they can vote on it, they cannot vote on it, it doesn't really matter. As long as you send it to them and they have received it, then, that's what your requirements are under 40C for the planning board.
Just so I'm clear, that's the Needham
Yeah.
Town Planning Board.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
yep.
I think Adam had a question and then Mo.
I'm actually on the planning board and the planning board representative on this committee. Are there certain areas that and I haven't gone through this since I've been on the planning board. Are there certain areas that the planning board typically would focus on or consider?
To be honest, I don't know. It's, we don't really hear from the planning boards usually, on our end, and it kind of varies in my experience. So I used to be the planner or the preservation planner in Framingham, and, we went through the process a few times there. They would just vote and be like, yeah, great, go ahead. I've heard some other communities where the planning board has voted them down because they thought that they could do a better job of historic preservation and they didn't need a local historic district. So it it depends on the planning board really, and kind of what their interests are and, their role in the community, their position in the community, that kind of thing. We obviously hope that they would be supportive, a local historic district is very different from zoning, has different goals and a different purpose. But, yeah. It just kind of depends.
There doesn't appear to be any adverse impact to any abutters in this type of thing.
No.
So I would hope that our planning board is supportive. Thank you.
I just have a couple of procedural questions, probably for Chris. So the proponent would be the historical commission or the select board which appointed this committee?
It's usually the study committee, I think.
That's right. So the study committee is the proponent.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the select board gets the comments. I guess the planning board would get it. Procedurally. Okay.
And it wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of that in the process.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to begin going through the study review. So everybody hopefully received the updated draft that was sent this afternoon. I just need to pull it up. And then I think we'll just go through section by section. If there are any comments, edits, or items for discussion. I'm gonna jump through the table of contents unless there are any issues and start at page 4, contact information sheet.
Madam Chair, just
Yeah.
two edits to this based on Jen's feedback were the expected date of public hearing, expected date of town meeting vote are expected,
Okay.
not firm, and we need a specific date. So I put in placeholders,
Okay.
one being 30 November, which is the 4th Thursday in November, the 3rd being Thanksgiving. And town meeting, assuming it gets a vote on the first day, which would be May 6th per the charter.
Okay. Thank you. And then the only other edit was for Board of Realtors, it's actually the Greater Boston Association of Realtors. So there are a couple places we may have to adjust, we're gonna adjust that. Were there any other edits to this page that?
Just to comment that the 30th is the 5th Thursday of November.
What's the fifth? My apologies.
I don't know that
I saw elsewhere. it said
Thanksgiving is the
third.
4th.
The whole. What's the?
23rd is definitely Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and that's the 4th Thursday.
Mhm.
You said,
I said,
you had the
I
correct
said
dates
third.
and the correct holiday, but you said
You were correct.
3rd. And in fact, the 23rd is the 4th.
Third
and the
Thursday would
30th
be
is
the
fifth.
16th.
5 Thursdays in November.
So. Um,
So the November.
this is also expected. So this body, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, could meet at any point in time it so chooses.
Yes, and then, yeah, I
As long as
mean,
it's-
obviously you have. You know, all the way until May if you're looking for next spring, so you can certainly meet at any point. As long as it is 60 days after when you anticipate submitting this to me.
I'm gonna flag this for further note just in case, because I already know of one person in this room, as well as myself, who can no longer make the September scheduled date. For this committee. Karen, I know that's a scheduled item for later on in this meeting, so I'm just gonna flag this.
Gloria.
Yeah, my thing, you spelled my name wrong,
That'll do it.
EI instead of IE. And it should be Needham History Center. Or Needham History Center Museum.
There's another spot for that. Any other comments on this page? Go to the next one. All right, so the next section is the introduction. If anybody had a comment or a question on this, happy to take that.
Looks primarily as boilerplate for most of it, right?
Yeah, it's important to remember that these are really for town meeting voters. You know, they're not for you guys who know the process or for preservationists. So we like to have that kind of background in there of, you know, what this actually is. And that there's sort of legal precedence for these districts.
So then I did have a question, and I don't know if it's just semantics, I'm not looking to show wordsmith something, but in the second page, the paragraph ends with local historic districts. So it says local historic districts do not prohibit. That phrase, I had a question on, because the local historic district may prohibit changes, correct?
Yeah, just. What we usually say is like local historic districts do not prevent all changes to historic properties. But then again, they allow, you know, as you have in the next, there, the thoughtful consideration of change.
Well, how about if we said if local historic districts are not intended to. prohibit changes?
The local historic district provide for review of changes to historic properties,
Can you just repeat what you said?
provide for review of
Hmm.
instead of do not prohibit. I just already know I didn't mean to interrupt.
Does review imply the ability to say no?
Yeah, that's later in the document.
Yeah, so then that makes sense.
Okay,
Before we move over, there's also two other changes that Jennifer had recommended out. One of which was clarifying that Needham has a number of structures individually listed on specifically the National Register of Historic Places, which is to prevent confusion between the National Register of Historic Places and the state's similar but distinct register. As well as to specifically call out the federal designation, but it's the
Yeah.
state.
So just, you know, because there is a lot of times confusion, oh, well, it's already in the National Register, it's protected. So we just like to include information about the National Register, but just making it clear that it is honorary and doesn't really provide a lot of protection. And then also kind of separating that from the local demolition delay process, because that's a completely separate thing.
I also have a question here. In the blue where it says local historic districts are also benefited by increasing property values. I think we had a conversation about this actually last year. Multi property districts may increase value.
Yeah,
Single property are not likely to
Yeah,
increase. And that's an important issue for town meeting.
yeah, yep. I think I had recommended removing that possibly.
Yeah, I highlighted that as well, because I do think that's gonna be a question at town meeting.
Right.
So I think what I had noted was there's a study from several years ago from Connecticut that does show slight increase for larger districts. But we don't really have anything in Massachusetts that is definitive, so. I just wanna set that aside.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
There's
The
also,
pink is good. That follows that statement.
By encouraging the adaptive reuse and
Mhm.
You sent me a citation on that one, right? You'd have to reuse them.
I think I did. I'll have to
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah, he sent me a citation.
I know we discussed briefly, this as well.
we did, so. My only question mark in that particular paragraph is that, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves for what might be coming, but. Other organizations I'm a part of, and we're talking about what may be stretch code. There's some concern that the new regulations. May be so costly for somebody trying to renovate an older home. That they may choose to be knocking it down instead, because I don't know I don't have all the details on it, but from what I understand, if you renovate a certain part, you have to go back and bring everything else up to standards. So this, my question here is what happens if something in this is contradictory to something like the stretch code? What prevails?
There's exemptions for historic buildings in the stretch code.
Okay.
I think that actually is important, and I think your point is correct. I mean, I think just experientially, to the extent possible, when we've done any improvement, we've tried to come up to the latest in technology and how you treat construction to minimize energy loss. So it's desirable, but if it kills any ability to maintain a home and then the historic condition, obviously there needs to be exceptions.
Yeah, okay.
And through the chair here, the expanded stretch code has not been adopted by the town.
Yeah.
Just where we are right now.
Right,
Is it possible to have Bob still on the screen just in case he has a question? I don't want to miss him.
yeah, it would be good. at
Okay.
that.
Absolutely.
Bob, I didn't want to lose you.
Thank you, Allison. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me okay?
I can. Did we miss anything? Did you have any comments or questions on this section?
Not yet. Thank you.
I think how you have it now in the pink is fine. It's fairly, obviously, sort of neutral to positive thing, and it's not necessarily referencing the stretch code directly, so I think it's fine.
I don't know, like, so broader.
Just anticipating perhaps. I was just curious about how it contradicts how
It's
it
a
works.
very, very legitimate concern, and it implies, the intended consequences. So that's good.
Anything else on the introduction? Go ahead, Miles.
Two other items, one which was brought up by Jen, just for her clarification, you'd referenced inserting language about work is only reviewed if it involves federal funding, federal permitting, licensing or funding. Do you mind expanding upon that and how we may wish to incorporate, or rather the committee may wish to incorporate that?
Yeah, and I can also, I think I just sent you the website. I can send you this, we have a handout. So we usually, again, just have kind of a brief paragraph that talks about the National Register itself and what those impacts are. And so the impacts from the National Register are only if you're doing work to a property that involves federal or state permits, licensing or funding, which is obviously not your average homeowner.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's extremely.
Yeah, and so
Vanishingly rare for residential.
exactly, yeah,
People
so
with houses would love that kind of thing.
yeah, yes, it doesn't happen. So we just want to make it clear that, and the house isn't on the National Register, so it's not as big of an issue right now, but just so that it's clear that this designation doesn't apply and this designation wouldn't get you the outcomes that you're looking for anyways, because it's not really protective. But I can send you some more language about that to fill in there. And then I would just make that demolition delay section sort of a separate paragraph. From that National Register stuff, so that it's clear that. You know, there's the National Register and then there's Needham's demolition delay bylaw.
Remove that first sentence off the paragraph.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that can be, that
Right
sentence
before
can be
beyond.
moved, that can be moved up, yeah.
Yeah, this would be its own paragraph, inserting text
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Demolition delay paragraph here.
Adam has another question.
It's just a minor thing in the paragraph that says this federal discrepancy. I mean, this federal designation rather. I would delete now the S after designation. So it's designation singular instead of.
Oh,
plural.
yeah, it is.
Mhm. Yeah, that's corrected.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, also speaking to the last sentence in that first paragraph.
Please.
I think that there will be a fear on the part of some committee members. That this is a de facto increase in the demolition delay. Through a back door, and so I think I would add. Create a stronger form of protection available for
Then go down to the demo.
certain historic properties.
Where,
Which
are you?
The
paragraph?
last sentence in the paragraph that begins, this
Then
this
demo
federal
paragraph.
designation.
okay,
Mhm.
so thus there is a need to create.
Yeah, because I think some people will interpret this as a way to force people who aren't in an historic district. But live in a black home in Needham. Into a situation where they're prohibited from exercising what they view as their rights. That makes sense?
So yeah, so what's your edit? I'm sorry.
That available. Stronger form of protection available for certain historic properties
Okay,
or
so,
participating
right,
historic properties.
so the end of the next paragraph.
Got it. That's good.
Does that make sense?
Adding
Yeah.
participatory.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's important.
because the key here, I think, is that you have a voluntary situation.
And you can also note that any future local historic districts would have to go back through this same process.
Right,
It's not that now the historical commission can just decide. You would have to go back through the whole study committee, study report process.
Good point.
Please.
Jen, do you have, are these two separate designations, the National Historic Register Districts and National Register of Historic Places? Are those two
No,
separate
Nope,
things?
they're the same thing. So now the National Register of Historic Places. You can have individual sites, a single building, you can have districts,
Okay,
the entire island of Nantucket. All of downtown Provincetown, so, yeah.
Did you have another edit to point out on this page?
No, I don't.
I do,
Go ahead.
question, I think we do need to emphasize the process and voluntary nature of it when we get down to, methodology, wherever we start listing parameters, because that I think, needs to be, it's in the parameters, needs to be punched up a little bit more, but the question now is, why is 1779 flagged?
Oh, it was a question I had for myself.
Uh-huh.
I answered it. I tried to remove my own comment.
No, they don't. like
There you go.
that.
Thank you.
You
Resolved.
can't do that ever.
I didn't get any of this access, I had no red line or anything.
Yeah, mine wasn't the line. All right, so moving on from introduction, the next,
This just got sent out with the red line. That was in the most recent update just a while ago. We got the other section.
all right, so moving on to methodology. Okay, there's some edits there then, since I've reviewed this.
Yeah.
Gloria,
The second paragraph, formations committee, I would make that preserving houses on the town and state historical inventory list. Because they've gone, they aren't, they're,
Not
the
identified.
state is a no, they're not, state is a subset of town. They're not all. There are some differences.
okay,
And 244 years ago in 1779, as one of the oldest remaining original homes. It's not actually, there were houses going back to the 1630s, so there isn't actually the original home. And someplace in there, we might want to note that 24 of the houses on the inventory have been demolished since the inventory was established, established in 1976.
So what I would suggest, so I haven't seen the significance section, so what I was gonna tell you all. One important piece about that significance section is not just describing the house as it is today or its history, but also talking about why you want to preserve it, why it's so significant that it that it requires a local historic district. So in that significance section is where it can be helpful to say things like that and say, you know, we had X number of 18th century houses that have already been demolished and there's only Y remaining. You know, none of them are in this great condition, or, you know, this is a unique style or form or something like that. So something like that I would put in the add to the significance section. And we'd also suggested moving that paragraph down to the significance section as well.
I'm sorry.
Which section?
This deleted section here.
Oh, I bring that over to the significance.
Yes.
No, that is in.
I think there was a typo in that, though. It's 36 years ago, right, for both? There was,
Yeah, I do see.
yep, so we're moving that paragraph, the property, I think 36 years ago.
Yeah.
We cover that in significance.
I actually didn't copy
We're just
paste
deleting
it, just gone,
Perfect,
Yeah.
okay,
because it was already covered in. Yeah.
okay. Any other questions or comments on the methodology?
Yeah, the zoning by, the second to last paragraph, zoning bylaw change. The 6-month historical property demolition delay was considered.
Mhm.
That was established in 1983.
Yeah, so this was a little confusing to me because you're saying that there was a zoning bylaw change that was considered, but isn't that just your current 6-month demolition delay?
It was a
We talked
later,
about extending it a couple of years ago, it didn't go very far.
right,
So it hasn't been a formal proposal to extend it.
But that was not something that was in relation to this specific building.
no,
No,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so what I took away, maybe we just need to wordsmith a little bit, so what is what this paragraph is supposed to be saying is that. You consider that, but it's not strong enough to ensure. The long-term preservation, is that what the purpose of that is?
I think it,
well, there's already a 6-month.
Right, I just think it was
Yeah.
a little confusing in that, Miles,
Was this referring to a proposed expanded demolition delay?
yeah, if I may,
please.
there was discussion, I don't know how long ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Or more, to propose to town meeting to extend the 6-month. Delay to a 12-month or 18-month delay. I don't think we landed on a particular. But there was a realization that there would be. That would be unacceptable, given the fact that not everybody with a designation was happy about having been designated.
So what I would suggest is. Just removing this paragraph here because it doesn't necessarily relate to the methodology of this specific process. And if you want to. Back in that other paragraph in the previous section on the demolition delay. Just make it clearer up there. Demolition delay is for total or substantial demolition. It's only a delay. It doesn't protect the building indefinitely or in perpetuity. You know, just kind of expand there. When you talk about demolition delay.
Right, and then the comment that you made about the number of houses that were lost, it's right in.
Yeah, you can put that in.
Which is what, 36 or 26?
24.
24.
So which section did you suggest moving this to? I just want to write it down.
So up here, yeah, that
Back to page.
Got it.
beyond
Okay.
the current demolition delay.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can just expand more about what the current demo delay is, and how it's different than a local historic district, that it's only, again, total or substantial demolition. It doesn't protect from smaller changes. And it can't prevent demolition.
In the, if I remember correctly, in this, the state produced a guide of how to prepare, which was really helpful.
Yeah.
And what I recall when I looked at it before, I think under the methodology section, there was a question of has, you know, any resource has been lost.
Mhm.
So to Gloria's point about the fact that I think we have lost 24 historic homes.
Yeah.
Without having this might seem to make sense. Do we want to reference that in the methodology section? Or-
You can, or as I said, it kind of fits in the significance section where you're talking about why you're choosing to protect this building. You know, as a start of saying that you've lost these other buildings and this is a
Right.
way to start, you know, protecting more buildings in Needham.
Very helpful, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on this section? All right, let's move to the significant section. And I'll open it up to questions or comments on that. So here we just said we're gonna
So
move
first time, there's
the 24 homes. We're gonna move that part here.
going to create an introductory paragraph. basically.
Okay,
Yeah, either an introductory or at the end, because I would say. This looks good, just kind of scanning it, talking about the history of the family and the house. And then again, you know, if down at the end, if you want to put something that's, you know, there's. You know, yeah, so like here where you say it's not listed in the National Register. There's, you know, X number of 18th century houses left in Needham. We've lost Y number in the past however many years. You could also talk about, you know, the style or the form of the building, if there's anything special about that. That's where that kind of stuff would go.
Gloria, can you say a little bit more about the 24 houses?
Gloria,
I'm sorry?
question.
Can you say a little bit more about the 24 houses? Were they all 18th century houses lost, or were they lost to demolition,
For the
or
most part, they were 18th century, some early 19th century, and yes, they were lost to them.
all 24 lost to demolition?
Yeah,
In the 20th century, the 21st century, do we know?
since 1970. The inventory was established in 1976.
Since then?
So, yeah, so pretty much since the 1980s, because the first few years of the movement.
Do we know how many 18th century houses are left in Needham? But
There
are there any
were-
more than what's listed in that?
There were 120 overall on the list, so 24 of those 120
96.
have been demolished.
96? Okay,
Yeah, so currently 96 remain.
There again,
It's 1880, but.
They're not all on the list if people
They're not,
didn't
they're whole-
choose to be.
Yeah, there are a whole
Like
bunch of
mine is.
these. Yeah, yours is sort of at limbo, yeah. It's on the inventory list as listing not yet confirmed.
All right. Sorry for another day. Anything else on significance? All right. This is-
We apologize that we got this to you so late, but we blame Bob. His fault.
All right,
But it's not here.
justification of boundaries.
I heard that.
But you can't do anything, you're not here.
All right,
Back too
There's-
far, Bob.
one edit you have there, restrictions.
Yeah, it was a 10.
Okay, any comments on this page? Okay.
I had a comment here.
Mhm.
I don't understand why we would include this. First, to me, it's implying that passing a district through town meeting is going to be difficult or has been difficult. That's what that sentence suggests. To me, the probability of town meeting approval is much more likely than it otherwise would be.
If Mo and his wife are volunteering to do this. They're choosing to do this, and so because the underlying property owner supports this effort, Therefore, it'll be easier to go through town meeting. In other words, if Mo and his wife were not supportive of this effort, the town was doing it on its own, then it will be more challenging at town meeting, where the subject property owner doesn't support the action.
But is that,
No, there's another point in that too.
No, go ahead. Well,
If more than one property is in the initial district, which is testing this whole premise, that becomes much more complicated because not all of the people involved in being affected by that might support it. So if town meeting can understand that the only participants in this I'll call it a prototype district, are the affected people and they support it, it's much more likely to be approved by town meeting.
I would honestly just take that sentence out and say that the property owner is fully in support of the district.
Yeah.
Pointing
Just-
out
just
any
leave it at that.
suggestion,
yeah,
just
yeah,
has no value
that in
there.
the second paragraph, and yeah, otherwise you're basically setting up for future difficulties.
Yeah.
Great.
Good suggestion.
And what did I say? Oh, just add a note because it is a single property district. Just add a note about what the surrounding properties are and why they're not included in the district. Obviously, we know why they're not included in the district, but just that they're different, you know, they're later, I think they're like mid-20th century stuff,
Right.
yeah. So there's not really a district there, of larger district there.
anything else on the justification? So the next page is the map. Which,
That looks fine. So one, which I didn't in my email, but I will suggest, so when this gets recorded at the registry of deeds, it has to be recorded in their plans department. But you don't have to follow their requirements for plans, so it doesn't need to be recorded on like Mylar and all that kind of stuff. You can just print out a map and bring it to them. But they do scan it into black and white in very low quality. So I would suggest printing that out on a really crappy black and white printer and making sure that it looks good and is still readable. I tend to tell folks to rely on line thickness rather than shading. And even if you can get rid of the green and gray and just make it building footprints, that would probably make it even a little bit clearer.
so Miles, you must have the black and white assessors print out maps.
I'll work with Melissa to
Yeah.
get something
Yeah,
more appropriate.
even if it's just, you know, someone in GIS can probably
And then
make just like a
Bob.
very basic
Yeah.
map.
Bob, go ahead.
Thanks. Do we want to have a locus map of where that neighborhood is in Needham? Is that helpful at all or needed? Because we all know that property, but other people looking at it may have no clue where it is in Needham. I'm not sure if that's important or not.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It might even be useful to have the nearest other properties of that vintage. If there are.
I would make sure that there's just one very clear map of the district, because that's what's gonna ultimately go to the town clerk and the registry of deeds. If you want to include other maps, of, you know, a larger locus map or something like a mattress or whatever, you can certainly do that, but yeah, just making sure there is one very clear map of the property.
Great. Thank you. So the next page, you just,
Yep, just needs to be in that format, yeah.
Yeah.
It does have an MHC ID.
Oh, it does.
It should, I think.
Gloria, would you have that number?
Would that be the NEE.7 number?
Yep.
NEE, capitals, NEE.7.
That's it.
NEE.7,
Needham.
And number 7.
Oh,
almost like a vanity license.
You do, you got one of those low numbers, I mean, you know, it was one of the important ones, so, you know. They did it early.
B7 as far as we're concerned.
page 13, options and recommendations for the bylaw.
Yeah, go ahead. This is what I was actually, what I mentioned before, there's a lot of stuff in here. When I first read this, I said, well, how can we do this without any parameters? And I realized it got, 10 pages of parameters and probably some sort of summary here, like a bullet for each section or something that basically makes the point that, these have to be carefully defined, the features within them are determined in advance and aren't, an ad hoc decision whenever the committee decides they don't like you. They have to go to town meeting for approval, stuff like that, that will make people realize this is not a taking. It's an intentional and very deliberative process that includes them as homeowners and doesn't just, impose something on them.
So almost like the summary in the warrant booklet that explains the article.
Yeah, 8 bullet points would probably do
Bob,
it. but-
okay. Bob, did you have a question?
Yes, a new question, just clarification on what it means when we qualify bylaw with the word draft. What is a draft bylaw as opposed to a real bylaw?
So this is this committee's recommendation, essentially to the select board. And then the select board will choose to place that bylaw on the warrant. And they could make changes if they wanted to, I suppose.
Without-
So that's how we
without
usually
town meeting
say that
input?
it's draft.
Okay,
What?
sorry to interrupt. So we as a committee bring it to town meeting through the warrant. It's, we're proposing a draft bylaw, and then the select board can make changes.
Yeah, so it's a draft in this study report, but
Okay.
if they choose to make changes when they actually put it onto the warrant, they could.
And that would not require further town meeting approval
Well, it would be voted on at town meeting once it's on the warrant.
for, as a full bylaw or,
Yeah.
okay, great, thanks, that helps.
Okay. Gloria?
Just a couple of technical things. I think if you said this draft bylaw, that would cover, what Bob is talking about, Saratoga draft bylaw. Inline should not be hyphenated. And the paragraph above, it's a very long sentence. And I was wondering if it's better just to, put as presented in this report, period. This report notes the single parcel nature of the district. Just to give it. Okay.
And then. Is there, among this committee, a desire to throw in, like Lori was saying, a few bullet points of. Greatest hits. Akin to what would be in the warrant article, but. Sorry.
I always think that's helpful. And then, like I said, that could be the start of whatever the description of the, the description of the warrant articles.
And it may also be useful to add a bullet points. One of the bullet points emphasize the fact that a lot of the bylaw is derived from the state statute. The standards are consistent between the two. We're not, the draft bylaw is not really, blazing any new legal ground. It's just adopting state law.
One of them should probably also remember that it governs, mention that it governs demolition and not, design. Or not, cosmetic choices, for some towns do have very strict cosmetic choices.
Yeah, I think you had excluded the paint color and stuff like
Yeah.
that, so.
And the voluntary nature of this? Yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, I think, the fact it has to be approved by town meeting. Nothing's done without the consultation of the homeowners.
I would be cautious
I don't
about
think purely voluntary, but they're maybe.
saying that it's voluntary, because you can establish districts without property owner consent. So at some point down the line, if you want it, town meeting might choose to do that. So I would, just be cautious about saying that, this situation is obviously completely voluntary, but in the future, it might not be.
So that's the question. Yeah, because that's a question we should anticipate if this comes up for discussion.
Yeah, that even if it's realistically, if the neighborhood opposed at town meetings and everyone.
Okay, great. Anything else on this page? Right, let's move into the bylaw. So page 14, and we'll just go, I guess let's just do section by section. Like, if there's anything, the preamble or purpose. Definitions. Okay, let's move to the next page, 15. I have a question. Gloria, go ahead, or did you-
The commission, district shall only be seen by a commission consisting of 7 members. Is it always, it could be more variable than that, right? I mean, it's,
Yep, so so I had a comment on this as well, so this is one of those places where you can kind of choose, there's some flexibility for the town. It can be, I forget, 3 or 5. Up to 7, and then you can also have, you can have alternates as well. Obviously, I don't think we need 13 commission members for one building, but you can in the future if you want. And then there's, you have
just consisting of up to 7.
you have the numbers there.
Yeah.
So my comment here was that you can have a combined historical and historic district commission. So it's one commission that oversees both the usual historical commission stuff, demolition delay, surveying properties, that kind of stuff. And then it also oversees the district. It's something to consider if you want to do that right now, if you're only gonna have a single property. Well, not doing anything to his house, there's not really a need for a full 7-person commission necessarily to oversee that. We don't recommend it once you start to have larger districts or a lot of districts. Because then that commission tends to get focused on just the districts and not so much the larger historical commission issues.
Right.
So something to consider. 40C is sort of more controlling in the membership of the commission than 48D, which is for historical commissions, MGL for historical commissions. So you would need to make sure that your historical commission then aligns with the appointments in this bylaw. But that's something to think about if you don't feel like establishing an entirely new commission. We do also have some towns where they technically have 2 separate commissions, but they have the same members appointed on both commissions. And they just sort of, gavel closed one meeting and then open the next one, when they're kind of dealing with things. So that could be one other way to sort of deal with it.
Let me ask you a question. Typically, in your experience, in a situation, because there are examples of single property business. It can't be a lot of work for those missions.
No, obviously, if you're not doing a lot of work on your property and they're not coming up a lot of times. So, most of the time, I'm trying to think of another community that has like a single property commission, and I can't think of one. Most communities have either multiple single property districts or just multiple districts, some of which are single property. So they have, one commission that's kind of overseeing everything, one district commission.
So is there a way to structure this so that if in the future there get to be more such districts, even if it's a multi-property district, that commission could then include this district, but until that happens, the commission would act?
I don't know if you could do that. I mean, because ultimately you'd have to change the bylaw if it's written one way, and you're looking to change it for a different way.
I don't know what the answer is.
I don't think you could be like, once we get to 3, this other thing kicks in,
We might be able to draft a bylaw that did that, sort of sprung into action with a new commission.
Yeah.
If there were more districts added later on, but that would be tricky. I wouldn't recommend it.
In the event that there would be additional districts proposed in reading the guidebook, is it correct to say that if a new historic district commission were to be established here, that that commission would guide the process of establishing any new
Yeah.
district?
Yes, so yes, once you establish one historic district, any new districts. There is no more study committee like this. Any new districts come from that existing historic district commission.
So then there would make sense to have a separate district.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, it's up, again, it's up to you guys. It doesn't really matter. You know, as I said, in this, we don't generally recommend having a combined commission. Because of what I said, folks tend to focus on the district itself, but if you're only establishing one single property district. It might
But
be,
given what Miles observed, it probably does make sense to keep it separate from the historic.
yeah, if you want to do that, then, yeah.
Don, did you have a question?
Yeah. Based on 4.2, wouldn't it be better that the study committee becomes the local historic commission? Because of the requirements?
It's a new board. So this study committee essentially gets dissolved by the select
Right.
board, and you would all have to like reapply to be on the new commission.
Because there are requirements.
There are, yeah, it's the same,
Yeah.
essentially the same requirements
For the
plus a
study.
district resident.
Right.
So there would still have to be a district president.
If it's in your bylaw.
Gloria?
Is this composition required? Or suggested? An
The,
architect, a member of the historical society, no.
the seats or the seeking nominees is required, and that's what it is. It's seeking nominees. It's not that you actually have people who meet those requirements. Obviously, we would want you to try and meet those requirements, but you know, some communities don't have an architect or whatever, so, yeah.
Then, would it be appropriate to change 4.1 to something like district shall be overseen by a commission, period? The commission can consist of up to 7 members appointed by the select board.
I believe it needs to be 5 to 7 members,
5 to 7.
I think.
I think it's-
Is it 3
think
of
it's-
I have to read that.
Yeah.
Read that.
And 7, appointed for staggered 3-year terms. Because if it's not 7, then it's not 1 for 1 year, 2 for 2 years, 2 for 3 years, yeah. That's
So we could do.
because the historical commission is appointed by the select board, so if the initial district commission were the historical commission, that would fit within 4.1. And I think we actually covered 4.6.
So we would keep 4.2 then, as.
Oh, I think you have to, right? You
So
can't say
then-
can include as
Right.
possible.
So we just need to fix it to Needham History Center and Museum.
Yeah. And for the real.
Yeah, and I don't know if you, yeah, Greater Boston Association of Realtors is what covers Needham.
I think the society. That's good.
Greater Boston,
Association.
You can also add additional seats if you want. but-
So when it says property owners within each of the district areas, right now we have one property owner. If we have a second property owner, then we have to have both of them on the district commission.
No, can you? It's usually you have to seek nominees. Yeah.
Hmm.
And one property owner from within each of the district areas. So you just have to have,
So you're looking.
so
for
if you
preference.
established a separate second district, then yes, you would need that. You need someone from that second district also on the commission, but
and Jen, would it be correct to
If
say
you have more
that?
than 7 districts, then your whole commission would be.
no,
Okay.
yes, sorry, that's true. You only need one property owner.
But you seek them from within the
From
number
within
of
those
districts you have.
districts, yes,
Okay.
yes. Sorry.
Miles, did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
I'm still a little, I want to be clear,
So
if,
if you have multiple districts.
but
you
what if there are
just-
multiple single parcel districts?
Yep, so you just need one property owner
Of
from any of
those
those.
proposed
from any of
properties?
those districts.
But
Not,
if the
no,
district is single parcel.
yeah, so
Does it
just,
have to be essentially the owner of that proposed single parcel district?
in this situation, yes, it would be that we have.
But if there were another single family district, is that a single property district? Is that the?
As long as you have one of those property owners, if you have two
Then
property
we-
owners in two districts, you just need one of them.
Okay, not one from each, yeah, from within each of the district areas.
Chris,
I hadn't caught this before, but if we're setting it up initially as only one single property district,
Right,
that would necessarily require you to be on the committee.
or my wife,
Or your wife,
right.
which, but I can't imagine that either one of you, if sitting on the committee, would actually act on everything that comes before the committee relative to
Yes,
this.
that is the other,
district,
that is
because
the
you
other
would-
tricky
you
one.
Have to recuse ourselves.
You have to recuse yourself.
Yes.
So I guess I'm not sure how we address that, but
How do the other communities address?
Again, it's usually, there's folks already have multiple districts, or it's a larger district, so they have a lot of property owners, and it's less of an issue, yeah.
Probably have an alternate.
That's an advantage of the alternate structure.
Mhm.
If it does suggest you can have alternate, right?
And also, these only add up to 4 seats.
Oh,
You can have up to 7 seats, so you could have 3 additional people who are just anyone.
is that a requirement? I should know this, but is that a requirement of state law that there be a representative on the committee from the
Yes.
district itself?
Yeah.
We need to change this in 42, where it says from within each of the district areas, because I think as that reads, it does imply that if there are, like Kim is saying, 4 individual single property districts, you need 4 separate participants.
Yeah, I'll have to look and see what some other towns have, because that's obviously not the case. We have, Somerville has 200 single property districts, they don't have 200 people on their historic district commission.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
could you change the one property owner from a designated historical district? Something like that,
Or from within at least one of the districts.
yeah.
Yeah,
All that like that.
so this commission for this district could also be the commission for substantive
Yep.
single.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so if you establish this district and you have this new commission and some other property owner comes forward, this new commission would also be in charge of the process that you all have gone through here. So they would do the study report, they would bring it to town meeting. If it passes a town meeting, they would then be responsible for reviewing changes on that district in that property.
Makes sense.
You have multiple districts, sooner or later, there's going to be a conflict of interest on one of the
Right?
proposals.
Yeah, I mean,
Somebody
it
on
comes
the
up all
the
the
district
time, I
committee is
mean,
gonna own one of those properties.
Yeah,
So,
like-
Yeah.
Handle that with an alternate.
We'll
Yeah.
alternate or
Yeah.
choose.
Going back up here, when we're talking about members, do we want to adjust the shall be 7 members or shall be between 3 to 7 members, maybe 3 to 5? Or excuse me, 5 to 7?
Flexibility is an advantage.
I think
And
5 to
quorum
7?
changes too. But I thought
Do
I
we
saw
have to decide that
quorum.
now? That's
I would
gonna be a
suggest-
select board
I would
issue.
suggest at least 5 to 7, because you do have to have those. You are supposed to be seeking nominees from those 4 seats. You don't have to appoint anyone from, or you don't have to always get nominees from those boards, but in theory, there should be at least 5 seats.
But sometimes it's hard to get people to be willing to serve, so having
Yeah.
flexibility. 25%.
Well, and that's why it's just seek
Seven.
nominees. If those boards don't nominate anyone, then you can appoint whoever you want.
I can't remember, I thought I saw it prescribed that quorum was 4 members. So that quorum would have to change to 5.
I think that's further down, yeah.
Yeah, 4.7.
Thanks.
There it is.
What section was quorum?
4 6.
6,
Can it be a majority of the? Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think suggest the majority of the appointed membership of the commission will constitute a quorum.
Well, four is, if it had been left at 7, it would.
Exactly.
Okay. So we're good with the commission sections, where are we, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 through 4.6, everything good there? Yeah. All right. I have a question on 5.1. So it's, I wrote it there and as well as in the definition of exterior architectural feature. So from what my question was, do we want to include anything that is not the house structure, such as a lamppost? I have a hitching post in my front yard.
So those
So
are
how do we
considered,
define that?
that's considered an exterior architectural feature.
That is included, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Because as, again, it goes back to 40C, and 40C has references in there to
It does,
like
okay.
what a structure is and what these other things are.
All right. Okay, is there any other questions on the next page, 16?
There are 2 administrative changes recommended by MHC as well, having to do with how things are posted in a conspicuous place in town hall and newspaper. Yeah, and
Okay.
removing those gives us flexibility to
Which
post.
section are you in? 5.3, 5.3.
Yeah, that, the reference to a newspaper is something that's in our bylaw, but it's not in 40C. Newspapers don't really exist anymore. It's kind of more of a hassle, honestly, having been the person that had to put the newspaper ads in. So I would suggest removing it. If there's other usual procedures that the town follows, you know, you could follow those or add anything in here. But really the only thing is that for the public hearings, it gets mailed to the property owner, the abutters, the planning board.
And
That's-
butters is defined by the way we define a butters.
I believe it's called, it's like people with an interest in the property. It's in 40C again,
Okay.
yeah.
So does
People-
that need to be referenced here?
It's referenced further down, in one of the later sections. I don't remember where, but, yeah. It's down in there somewhere, yeah.
Because,
Adam, did you have a question on these sections?
yeah, 5.3, I didn't really get access to this until like an hour or two before we're meeting tonight, so I haven't had a chance to review the bylaw myself, but there's some other people in the room that certainly have. Where it says in 5.3, designed for certain exterior, should we delete the word certain, because that appears to be subjective and not objective? Like we either want to establish specific objective criteria, or and that would be for the best scenario, because it would have the greatest clarity. Otherwise, I would certainly remove, or I would recommend removing.
I think 40C though specifies what those exterior architectural features are, right?
And it's also in the definitions,
Yeah, I mean,
which means you don't need, yeah, which if you take out certain,
Right,
that just means if it's, you know, there in the definition, it's what we're talking about, yeah.
It's section.
So we'll
Yeah.
strike review.
yeah.
Okay.
Can we make changes to 5.2 and 5.3 without hearings, changes to the regulation? There doesn't seem to be a process for notifying people this commission may adopt from time to time amend reasonable rules and regulations not inconsistent.
With a statute.
Yeah, but say not inconsistent with the statute, it would be specifying allowable paint color, you
No,
know, so. we-
no, so that is something that's in the paint color is something that's in the bylaw. So
Okay.
that would have to go to town meeting.
So it's not just.
The rules and
compatible with
regulations.
40C, it's also
are
compatible with
with
40C
law.
and as defined. in law.
Yeah, the rules and regulations are like setting up your application and your meeting schedule and, you know, those usual kinds of things.
Okay, so it's not stuff that
Yeah,
needs public approval. Or if it is, it's not.
and there may be like a town process for doing rules and regulations too, so. The boards. No.
In 5.4, can we just say chair and vice chair?
The secretary?
And secretary, but I mean, we're like chairman.
Oh,
The chairman
Oh.
of this.
As a chairperson.
got it.
I think chair is
You
becoming.
might say clerk instead of secretary.
Appreciate that too. Thank you.
Oh, secretary is gender specific, isn't it?
You
Used
don't
to.
ask me. All right, next page, 17.
Where are those records kept? 5.5?
Where does the commission choose? With the records?
In the cloud.
Well, what is the?
Don't ask. I mean, it doesn't. It's very.
In my
Very
previous
useful.
experience, they were kept in Rubbermaids in the
Yeah,
chair's
and
garage.
I
Exactly.
don't think Needham is.
You know, the agendas and minutes go to the town website and they're kept in the. You know, they're kept in that server and or the cloud where the town keeps its documents, but none of the deliberative. And supporting documentation. We just sort of keep that ourselves and.
I will
Yeah.
say, so the applications and the decisions do get filed with the town clerk, so those will be there. However, under the state records law, the town clerk only needs to keep those for 2 years, I think it is. It's a very short time period. So
Do copies go to the building department with?
that's up to the town.
So what do you do with file? File,
Oh, the
for your-
FOIA request?
FOIA, sorry.
I don't know.
I mean, there needs to be some public access to the decision.
That's a different division of the Secretary of State's office.
Wow.
So when this says commission shall keep, it's referring essentially to minutes? Keeping and posting minutes?
Yeah.
For which there is a process.
I mean, we're not creating a paper burden anymore.
So are there proposed changes to this, or is this fine the way it's been?
I have no objection to it.
Okay. Any other? On page 17. Adam?
In 5.6. The commission may instead of shall undertake educational efforts to explain to the public and property owners in America. If, you know, if there's no one else in the next 3 years that want. You know, historic district. Don't know if the commission necessarily gonna have the affirmative obligation.
That could just be a website of the commission. Shall makes it incumbent upon the commission to do that educational piece. May, you know, gives them an out and
Right, I was just referring to the, a function of time, but
but
you're right.
just an up-to-date website is explaining to the public and the property owners. I don't think it has to be onerous. Doesn't have to be, you know, direct mailing or anything.
I think it's a good point.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
I assume, Miles, that if this is passed, there will be a page then on the town website. It'll be one of the commission pages. Yeah,
Surely,
it'll be placed.
just like this study committee has a website.
And you can always put an article in the historical. For use.
Everybody sees that. Anything else on this page? Move to 18, please. So Miles, you made some edits there, right? Deleted by posting. Oh,
Correct.
that's what the newspaper comment was, okay.
Newspaper in the conspicuous place in town hall, because we don't post the things to the car post board anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, cork board. Um. And Mo, to answer your question, this is where the abutters.
Just double check. So it's the newspaper that's not required by 40C.
Oh,
The conspicuous place in town hall may be still in 40C.
Paragraph.
7.4. It's one of the sections towards the end.
what days before the hearing? In such manner as it may
Yeah, I
determine,
guess, yeah, okay. Never mind.
we're just not paying ourselves into first, yeah,
Yeah,
not overly prescriptive
yeah,
MGL,
it's, yeah.
who knew?
Yeah, you just gotta mail it to some people, so.
Sorry, I go back to 6.1. I'm reading this right, except as bylaw provides, no building or structure or part thereof within a district shall be constructed or altered in any way that affects, unless, okay, I'm sorry. Unless the commission shall proceed. Couldn't find the qualifier.
This property boundary has 3 public ways.
And probably everything's visible. You gotta remember that.
That's okay. That's right.
Okay. Right, I have a question going back and saying, thinking, we keep referencing the 40C with the items. Do we need to reference that in the definitions of this?
It is referenced.
It's
in there
referenced
somewhere.
somewhere, right? I just didn't know if it would be
Yeah.
helpful in the definitions or not, no.
No, it's either at the very beginning or the very end. It says that it's sort of established under 40C.
Regulation side.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Yeah, and there's other places too.
At the very beginning, it was in the introduction.
I think so, yeah.
On page 18. Anything else on 18?
Right.
Okay, let's move to 19, please.
Yeah, the appeal process is kind of weird. So the appeals will go to, for you guys, MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They have their whole little process that they do, and they appoint a board of other historic district folks to review when there's appeals.
Good.
And I think, Jen, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this process is optional for the town of providing info.
Yes, there is another way that you can set up your own appeals locally, I think, like through the select board or something like that. Or you can choose to use MAPC.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because in the absence of this appeal to MAPC, an applicant or a butter can go directly to court.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of possibly short circuiting a court appeal, but I just wanted to know that it's a good idea, but it's not technically required.
Yeah. And they know they're used to it in MAPC, they have a whole process set up now.
And I think that establishes an arm length, process. If you don't feel like you're just gonna go in a circle.
Love you, guys, something? Great, the 20, please.
8.3. The New Historical Commission has also published guidelines for the addition of solar to historic houses.
So that might be something that, so kind of going back to the rules and regulations, what we encourage communities to do is adopt design guidelines. But not in the bylaw, don't put them in your bylaw. But that might be something that once the new historic district commission is established, they could look at those and say, okay, we are also going to adopt those as our design guidelines for solar for this commission.
But you don't want to put them here.
Don't put it in the bylaw. It's a lot easier to change if it's not in the bylaw.
Yeah, because you have things like heat pumps as well.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on page 20?
0.4 should be in the bullet points.
Excuse
Yeah,
me,
people
Madam
worry about
Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, unfortunately, I need to leave, but I want to apologize for my early departure. I look forward to reading the minutes.
Thanks, Bob.
See ya.
Hi, Bob.
I'm sorry, I'm saying 8.4 should be one of the bullets.
It should be one of the
in the
bullets.
summary.
People worry about that all the time.
Yeah, agreed.
However often you say it.
Well, you can put it in bold.
You put it at the very front, so.
Could be the title of the
Still,
proposal.
still get questions.
Great, page 21. I think I have a question. Oh, I did have a question on this page. And it's only because I've sat in so many town meetings where people argue penalties and fees. Can you just explain the 300 where that?
So the enforcement of this bylaw essentially goes back to the building code.
Okay,
And so that 300 is set in the CMR, the Code of Massachusetts Regulations. It's for a building code enforcement, basically.
okay.
So it is what it is.
No, there's an answer, as long as there's an answer. That's not just
It's- It's good, but it's also, it can be unfortunate. We had a situation in Newton where a developer demolished a building illegally and, all they can do is fine them basically $300 a day, So forever until he rectifies the violation.
You can't.
Which you can't.
But.
Stuck it that up.
There's in the science. But essentially, shouldn't there be a denial of permit? And because, section 6.
Yeah,
you
well,
know, except
so,
the bylaw provides you don't get a permit unless you've gotten the
yep,
certificate,
yeah, so
so.
this is basically if you do something even without a permit. So you just go and you just do something. Which happens a lot in historic districts, unfortunately. You just go and you do the work and you don't even realize that you need a permit or know that you need to go to the historic district commission or anything like that, so.
There is one.
Please.
11.2 states that the commission may, upon receipt of a written complaint or upon its own initiative, institute any appropriate action or proceeding in the name of the town of Needham. Most boards in town don't have an independent ability to file a lawsuit on their own. They would need the permission of the town manager and select board. And I don't think there's any authority that would provide for this for the commission in 40C. So I think I would suggest that we remove or revise this to indicate that they can seek to institute any appropriate action or proceeding, but the commission does not have independent authority to do it on its own.
That makes sense.
Thanks. Okay. Page 22. And then the rest are the digital images. And then Mo and I will set a date to come and take some updated current pictures to add to this.
Yeah,
I have an aerial.
Great.
Is your drone picture?
Can all these pictures be contemporary?
it's up to you. You can use historic images. It's nice to add them. I like them because I have to make a presentation out of this. But then also we do need current pictures of what the property looks like. So,
Yeah, we'll do that.
Does Webster end in that photo, by the way, where that rock mass is? That's a question.
No.
for it.
Mhm.
It continues past
It
it.
continues past it, that's probably a wall that belonged to the house across the street.
The pond in the back of that picture on the right, which can barely see, reappeared briefly in the storm. Snow was great. It was that you wanted to figure out if there was a way to keep it.
If you've got tadpoles, it becomes protective. What was it wrong with
Okay, so thank you for that. I thought that was great, actually very interesting, and thank you for answering the questions. The next item on the agenda is to review the timeline and work plan, so I'm gonna kick that back over to Miles to
Great.
go
So,
over that for us, please.
so thank you. What we just did was we discussed the PSR. It's great. So
Sorry.
up next, and I just would like the chair and the rest of the committee's general approval that this is what we would like to do, and that any additional changes that are made are going to be in line with this and distributed to the committee after some edits. In addition, Chris will also have the opportunity to look through the finalized bylaw just one last time to make sure it all looks good, with the intent that at the September meeting, this committee would take a vote to approve the PSR, potentially with minor stylistic amendments before then, and also vote to authorize staff to submit that to the planning board and the Mass Historical Commission. At that meeting, that would be the start of our 60-day clock, at which point we could then schedule.
the start of your 60-day clock is when I get it. And when I say that it's complete. So,
Oh,
yes,
interesting.
so keep that in mind. It's not
Very good.
you sending it, it's me saying, yes, this is complete.
Got it.
Here's your 60 days.
Somewhere I saw it say it's within 60 days, you can hold a hearing. But you're making a distinction that it's actually can't be, the hearing can't occur before the 60 days.
No, you can do other stuff. You can have a regular meeting within 60 days. But the official public hearing that's required, that needs, notice and everything, that has to happen 61 days and on.
Okay,
So if you don't approve it, but it's on your desk for 60 days, we can have the hearing.
No, well, so we say that it's complete. And I'll write an email back and say, this is complete. So your 60 days starts the day that I received it. And here you go. Yeah. I won't leave you guys hanging for 60 days or anything like
I
that.
kind of knew that.
Okay, 60 days after confirmed complete document.
And so that's why I say to send it to me first. And then once I say it's complete, then
Mhm.
send it to the planning board. So you're not sending like 3 different documents, back and forth.
so our goal is to have that ready to go after our September meeting.
Mhm.
And you said we need to change the date on that?
Yes, I know Mo can no longer make that meeting. I believe it was September
It was.
17th, third Thursday,
14th or?
I had it as.
21st.
Okay, so we want to move this to the 21st.
Was it 21st?
I have it down for the 14th.
14th, yep, second. So if folks have their current calendars up, we can do this now.
Does Thursday, the 21st work?
No.
Okay,
Okay,
Thursday, the 28th.
I would not be present, but we could have another staff member cover if needed. Same thing.
28th is kind of a pro forma meeting to just finalized and adopted.
Mhm.
Yes.
I mean,
I won't be able to make it.
alternatively, understanding that. With one exception, everyone here is on another committee. Two exceptions, is on other committees. And obviously with the chair's approval, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, with the edits approved, I guess the board could vote to approve the PSR being submitted with the amendments, or with the edits as made. It's just in case there was other comments that this board may wish to discuss, it needs to be done in open session or done by a subcommittee of this board, given the, I guess, or a small subcommittee, or just the chair or vice chair for that matter, could just approve the review of that document made on the board's behalf. If I'm not incorrect, I mean, that would be pretty non-standard though. If I recall, sorry, I keep looking at council.
Please.
When I was on the select board, we took actions that gave the town manager authority to finalize what we had adopted. That seems to me similar to what you're talking about.
You could vote tonight theoretically to approve the report in its current form with all the changes discussed tonight, subject to, minor editorial changes to be made by the chair and final review of the bylaw by town council. That vote would allow the document to be finalized without another meeting. If that's the preference of the board. It's really a question of whether everybody wants to see it again and have another opportunity to comment on it. If we're content that this body has done all of its work tonight, then you could vote it that way.
Do you want a motion for that?
Authorizing you to submit.
I
What do
just
you
have
wanna
a
think about it?
procedural sort of, so we do that. We send it to Jen. They let us know in 60 days. We still have a public hearing and then there could be edits after that from the public hearing.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it's expected that there will be
It's expected, so
additional.
there's still
edits.
yet another opportunity to provide edits if something were to be
If-
caught that we missed.
And it's not the final study.
No.
Correct, okay, then, yes, then I'm would entertain a motion.
I would move the adoption of this subject to the chair and staff review of the changes that were made to this document. I can said it in a very articulate way. I would yield to Chris for the
Please.
final word.
I can try. Move that the committee approve the preliminary study report. Subject to the changes discussed during the meeting tonight. And subject to further editorial changes to be made by the chair. And
Review.
further revisions to be made by town council to the bylaw. I'm sure I said that well.
You said it better than I
You
did.
include the town council, do we need staff? Anything?
And staff.
Chair and staff.
Chair and
Chair.
staff.
Second,
No, I'll make that motion.
you moved it, I'm seconding it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion on the floor?
Aye.
Aye, any, well, the opposite aye. Good, thank you. All right, that's helpful.
So that cancels the.
Yeah,
Ten
I mean, I was trying to get nervous looking at that calendar with everything we all have, trying to come up with something we could also
Right.
all be for. Okay, so we've adjusted that, let me just, so we did as well.
So Miles, you'll delete the September 14th for our calendars.
So
Okay.
I'm just gonna
And then we won't be able to set the public hearing then until we know when the 60 days are up.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm sorry.
We'll call you every day.
I'm pretty quick with them, so.
Now,
yeah.
setting
And
the
yours
date of the
is in
meeting,
good shape, so.
who sets the date of that public hearing? Is that something okay,
I would basically be. With your approval, I would once again try and figure out a date
oh,
outside of that 60-day window that everyone can meet. And then we advertise that as a public hearing in line with relevant MGL. We give notice. The one question in the meantime that I've highlighted in yellow here is, do we wish to do a public information session? This was something that was noted out in the guidebook. Obviously, this being one property, less need to do public information for the residents. However, there is, this being the potential first historical district in town, there could be benefits of having a public information session generally about what is a local historic district.
Is that something that's usually done prior to town meeting? Like, would we? So if we did that, it would have an information session, a public hearing, and then potentially another information session prior to town meeting? Or would you?
There is a presentation to the select board and the planning board that would be part of it as part of this is a warrant article. Relevant to both of your boards. Those are both public meetings. They're not necessarily public hearings, but they're public meetings. And just a needamism here would be, probably being present at warrant night and being able to speak to that to the town meeting members who attend the night.
Select board meetings are taped and available to anybody who's interested.
Sure.
So it seems to me that presentation should function as a public information session.
So you could also just give an update to the select board if that's something you can do, just at one of their meetings and say, before the public hearing and say, we submitted the study report to MHC, we're now in this waiting period, we have this recommendation, our public hearing is gonna be on this date.
Yeah.
Again, it's televised, it gets you kind of to a broader audience.
And they can ask questions.
A good way to do
I
that.
do, I like that.
Yeah.
I think that's better.
I can ask the town manager and the chair.
Please, thanks.
Even if it's just, 5 to 10 minutes or something, or before the public, 2 weeks before the public hearing or something.
And actually, I think that's a great way to get this information. A lot of people read those agendas more so than.
And it'll be covered in the 2 medias that we have.
Okay, did you have other questions for us on the schedule?
No other questions at this time. That would mean the next communication here would be, I would, for this whole committee, when submitting up to MHC and the planning board, after all the reviews are done, and there might be some communication with the chair, just doing minor last minute edits, you will all be CC'd on that submission. You will have access to the final document. And then I will reach out to schedule a date outside of that 60-day window once Jen gets back and says, yes, this is good and this is complete. That would be that for now.
Sounds like we're talking about early December, maybe. Is that?
I think it'll depend on when you get here. I mean, if you get it in the next week, your 60 days will be a lot sooner than
Okay.
another month or so.
Right, so even if we were still targeting that mid-September date for submission. Because that's what we initially targeted, and those dates are still pretty.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the earlier we get clocks running, because town meeting creeps up very fast.
And so just so you know, if you do get it into me in the next, 2 weeks or so, we have a meeting on September 13th. Where I would present it. We are not having a meeting in October, and then we would have a meeting November 8th. That would be the next one.
Well, then we need to get that in prior to your September 13th meeting.
It doesn't matter. It's not, it's not, again, if it goes beyond the 60 days, you guys can go beyond this, or you can continue your process without our presentation, but.
Do you need it in advance of that, how much in advance of your?
I like to get them like a week, at least a week or so before.
I would need to finish this by September, just in my own work triage, because town meeting in May is creeping up. Town meeting in October is upon us. And
Yeah. I think that's fine.
documents
Okay.
need to be built.
So we will not schedule our next meeting until we have submitted in the 60 days. And so our next formal meeting would be the public hearing.
That's great.
Okay. Great. Any further questions or comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
We'll move to adjourn.
I second that.
All in favor of adjourning? Right? Thank you, everybody.